And welcome to the first episode of Shots presented by the Beerfield Fantasy Football Podcast. It is Sunday, August 20th, 2017, and we are here to bring you some news and some game recaps. So this is the first episode of Shots that we are doing. We put out a podcast typically on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays during the NFL season, and we are bringing this as a way to provide injury updates, game recaps, and news faster to our listeners. You know, we record 3 days a week, but news happens every day. I am your host for this particular episode, Christopher Hopper at HopBFF, Dan Thury at ThuryBFF, and Nick Sparts at Nick Sparts on Twitter will be also taking hosting duties as we kind of cycle through these. So these will be out every day. So hopefully the production quality, the recording quality, the video quality, and all that jazz gets better as we go. But this is our first go at something like this and kind of building YouTube following. So we're going to give it the old college try. And as our slogan goes, all preparation, no organization. It's 11 o'clock on a Sunday night. We're figuring this one out on the fly. So let's go and get into some news. So first bit of news from Sunday, August 20th, 2017, Anquan Bolden announces his retirement from the NFL. So he apparently left the Bills today shortly after signing and just said, screw it, I'm done. So slight bumps to Charles Clay, Zay Jones, Jordan Matthews. He figured to be a big red zone threat into that offense. So just kind of hit undo on the last week of rankings adjustments there. For the Rams, Tavon Austin is still day-to-day with a hamstring injury and pretty irrelevant at this point. They seem to be moving on from that little experiment, and I do not blame them, as they should. He's never really shown up for fantasy, so if you're still onto that type of thing, he's still hurt. Devonta Freeman for the Atlanta Falcons is still in concussion protocol. He did not play earlier today, and no word on when he's going to be back. These things typically don't linger. I'm not concerned for week one. Over in Denver, the Denver Post is reporting that Paxton Lynch may have already lost the starting job to Trevor Siemian. More on this later, but if the first two preseason games are any indicator, not a huge surprise. For the Redskins, Jordan Reed has been activated from the PUP. He was dealing with the toe injury, so he's still going to miss his normal quota for games not played, but expect him to show up in preseason week 3, week 4, and get some reps in and be good to go by week 1. So Jordan Matthews, who was dealing with a bone chip in his sternum or something along those lines, was catching passes during individual drills on Sunday. He expects to be ready to play for week 1. So this is pointing in that direction. Not a terrible, I just forgot how words work, but not a big surprise there. According to Matt Lombardo of New Jersey Advanced Media, it wouldn't be surprising if LeGarrette Blount is amongst the Eagles roster cuts. So Dan Thury was joking on one of the podcasts, I think maybe the one that just came out, that LeGarrette Blount is somehow going to get cut from the Eagles, find his way back to New England, and take over the short yardage role there. It looks like it could actually be happening. They're trying to run him to the outside, which isn't Blunt's game, so if that's the type of offense they want to run, not entirely surprising that he may be cut, and they may go with Sproles and Smallwood and Pumphrey.
Ugh. What the hell happened?
So that's all we got for news. Moving on to game recaps. So these will be game recaps from the end of day Saturday that we didn't cover on the podcast that releases tomorrow, as well as anything that went down today, August 20th. So Cowboys-Colts. Marlon Mack was impressive for the Colts, as it has done nothing to hurt his dynasty stock, rushing 5 times for 45 yards and catching 2 balls for 14 yards. So Frank Gore's not getting any younger. Robert Turbin's been around the league for a little bit. Marlon Mack figures to be the future here. Did nothing to hurt his stock, so continue to draft him in Dynasty. Another wide receiver that flashed for the Colts, JoJo Natson, led the Colts with 3 receptions and 60 yards. He could be a sneaky candidate for the number 3 receiver spot, as the Colts are trying to trade Dorsett or somehow get away from that experiment. Kamar Aiken's also there, but that third spot is wide open, and Natson did flash with the third team. As for the Cowboys, McFadden rushed 9 times for 59 yards, so he's still looks to be the handcuff with Ezekiel Elliott in timeout for 6 games. Obviously, depending on how that appeal goes. That appeal date has been set for August 29th. Also of note, but not really relevant to anything, Rod Smith and Cooper Rush both impressed. So didn't want to not acknowledge their performance, but it's not really relevant in Dynasty at least as long as they're on the Cowboys or in redraft. Moving on to the Bears and the Cardinals. For the Bears, show favorite Tarek Cohen ran with the starters in the absence of Jordan Howard. He was impressive, carrying 11 times for 77 yards. We like him as a sneaky pass-catching back in PPR format. He does look like he's going to be the number 2 there, as it was him starting in the absence of Howard, not Jeremy Langford, not Benji Cunningham. So Tarek Cohen continues to be and should be a sneaky late-round pickup in PPR formats. Mitchell Trubisky once again outplayed Mike Glennon. Expect him to start sooner rather than later, at least as these performances keep up. So definitely a dynasty stash, that should go without saying. Don't pick him up in redraft, but watch the situation as the season goes. As for Bears wide receivers, Cam Meredith saw more targets than Kevin White, solidifying himself as the wide receiver to own in Chicago. And also of note, the Bears defense was impressive, gaining consistent quarterback pressure and good pass protection, also keeping David Johnson bottled up during his 2 drives, so sneaky streamer for them. As for the Cardinals, no one really emerged as a solid wide receiver 2 following the demotion of John Brown, so continue to watch that situation. They could be a high-powered passing offense, but right now outside of Larry Fitzgerald, everything's kind of a question mark. Krishan Hogan and Chad Williams, some dynasty darlings, both flashed and continue to be decent dynasty stashes there, especially with Fitzgerald potentially done after this year. Moving on, the Broncos and 49ers. For the Broncos, Trevor Siemian once again outplayed Paxton Lynch. Paxton Lynch did not look good. The offense was out of rhythm. He missed a wide open Demaryius Thomas in the flat on one play at least. Took off running under pressure. Still just doesn't look comfortable out there. Everything looked a lot more fluid with Trevor Siemian under center. I expect him to win that job. As for the running backs, C.J. Anderson looked adequate. Jamal Charles did not play again. D'Angelo Henderson's the real back of note. He saw 3rd down reps with the first team and was once again impressive, so he could be carving out a nice little role there in Denver. I'm still staying away from it in redraft because I don't think he holds enough value, but definitely pick him up in Dynasty, as if Anderson struggles, or even if this trend continues, he's going to have a nice role. On the 49ers side of the ball, Marquise Goodwin, not Pierre Garçon, was Hoyer's most targeted receiver, so keep an eye on him in deeper leagues. Carlos Hyde took nearly all of the first-team reps. There was no mix-in of Hightower or Joe Williams, so he should be the workhorse back there. And George Kittle had a man's touchdown catch, swatting defenders away like flies, so don't sleep on the rookie there. They've come out and supported Vance McDonald, but there are rumors early in the season they could be trying to cut him and or trade him. They drafted George Kittle, and he was impressive, so keep an eye on him in Dynasty, but he should hold no redraft value. Moving on, Rams and Raiders. Our boy Cooper Kupp was on fire, catching 6 balls for 70 yards and a touchdown. And Jared Goff actually looked like a competent NFL quarterback, completing 16 of 20 passes for 160 yards and a touchdown. So Cooper Kupp in PPR formats could be a decent late-round flyer. Also in Dynasty, he has an outside chance at actually leading the Rams in receptions. I know Sammy Watkins is there, but him and Goff appear to have good rapport. And his route running, he was getting separation and had a nice 29-yard touchdown catch. Also in limited work, as of note, Todd Gurley actually looked like a competent NFL back again, gaining some positive yardage. He wasn't terrible. Did see some catches in space as well, so it does look like they're going to involve him in the passing game even more. As for the Raiders, not much of note here. Marshawn Lynch played 1 drive. He looked shifty and quick like the Marshawn Lynch of old. They still plan on limiting his touches to 200 carries, and apparently Lee Smith is still alive. The old Buffalo tight end caught a touchdown pass, so don't expect that to mean anything. I just didn't even know he was still a person. Moving on, Texans and Patriots. For the Texans, Lamar Miller did nothing to make me not hate him, and the same for all other Texans backs not named Deonta Foreman. Foreman had a nice catch and run, a couple of grinder runs, chipping off some nice chunks of yardage, throwing some defenders over. Still think if Miller struggles, Foreman has an outside chance at taking that job. Definitely stash him in Dynasty. Lamar Miller is still sitting, I think, in the early teens for most of us. As for the Texans, staying there, Bruce Ellington returned from the dead and flashed with the first and second team offenses, and is possibly a sneaker fill-in at wide receiver too, with Will Fuller doing his best Tony Romo impression. And speaking of that, Jalen Strong also had a nice catch in the back of the end zone, so they still search for his replacement, for Will Fuller's replacement while he's out on injury. 2 guys to keep an eye on there. As for the Patriots and their mess of a backfield, James White had 1 reception and then rode off into the night while Rex Burkhead took over with the first team. game. He looked good as a runner and a receiver, and had the first team reps to himself after James White left the game. Deion Lewis worked exclusively with the 2s, and he just looked okay. And then Brandon Bolden came out with the 3, so still no sign of Mike Gillislee. And James White, just the 1 rep. So Burkhead is increasing his draft stock in both redraft, and Deion Lewis is still a thing. So still wouldn't be surprised to see him cut, but as of right now, it looks like he may have at least a backup role. Moving along to the Packers and the Redskins. The Green Bay Packers, Jamal Williams and Aaron Jones were both unexpiring in the absence of Ty Montgomery. Neither one of them really flashed a lot. Both had adequate chances. So Ty Montgomery's job is just solidifying even more despite the rumblings of Jamal Williams earlier in the preseason and late into the offseason. Martellus Bennett didn't catch anything between the 20s, but he was targeted in the red zone for a nice touchdown grab. So if anything, that may hurt Adams. But Martellus Bennett, we still are trying to wait to see what he's going to be with Aaron Rodgers, who doesn't really use his tight ends a lot, but we know Bennett's a red zone monster. As for the Redskins, Samaje Perine had a nice bounce-back game after a terrible debut. He carried 8 times for 45 yards and caught 1 ball for 29 yards on the second team. Meanwhile, Rob Kelly stumbled his way to a not inspiring 1 yard per attempt with the first team. 9 attempts, 9 yards, not going to get it done. Good bounce back for Perine, who looked terrible in his first game. Keep an eye on that situation, as it could quickly become a running back by committee. It is worth noting, however, that Kelly did run exclusively with the first team and Perine exclusively with the second, so we'll see if that changes in week 3. As for other Redskins running backs, Chris Thompson saw the third down work as we expected, so he's a good late PPR stash still. And Ryan Grant, not Josh Doxson, worked as a wide receiver 3. So Doxson's draft stock sinks faster than the Titanic, while Ryan Grant could kind of take that Jamison Crowder role as Crowder steps more into the Garcon role. So definitely keep an eye on that. He could also be a sneaky pickup. Moving on to the Lions and the Jets, as I continue to talk your ear off, Bryce Petty outplayed Christian Hackenberg for whatever that's worth. Neither one of them were particularly good. Speaking of not particularly good, they fed Bilal Powell, but it was ugly. He stumbled his way into the line a couple times, had a couple pass catches, but nothing too great there. But if Todd Gurley taught us anything last year, it's that volume leads to value, so he looks like he's going to get fed. Forte is still nowhere to be found, and something called the Lewis Murphy was the Jets' only impressive player. So Lewis Murphy running with the thirds, ripped off a couple good runs and looked good as a wide receiver or as a kick returner, punt returner. Maybe worth something in Dynasty. Just keep an eye on him. Moving on to the Lions, check out the Galladay end because Marvin Jones showed he was still the number 2 and holding a nice catch in the end zone. Also saw some nice catches in between the 20s. So Marvin Jones still the number 2 receiver there. A lot of people are sleeping on him. Should be able to get him at a good value in redraft. Zach Zinner, also of note, took over for Amir Abdullah on the goal line. So this hurts Abdullah's touchdown value. Doesn't really make Zinner draftable, but it does take away from Amir Abdullah. So keep an eye on that situation if that continues throughout the preseason. Moving along. Moving along to the Chiefs at the Bengals. For the Chiefs, Kareem Hunt, the rookie, ran with the first-team offense, and he looked very, very good, while Spencer Ware was missing in action, carrying 1 time for 3 yards. So that's transitioning more to running back by committee, and if Kareem Hunt continues to impress, he could actually usurp Spencer Ware as a starter there. He did nothing to hurt himself in this game. Chiefs opened up the playbook when Patrick Mahomes came in, and he did not disappoint either. So if they struggle with Alex Smith, which is a real possibility, especially given the cut of Jeremy Maclin, it could be Mahomes' team. The offense looked more fluid. They definitely looked like they had more options in the playbook with him under center. But, don't pick him up in redraft, but definitely in Dynasty if you're doing a startup, or if you haven't done your rookie draft yet, make sure you get Patrick Mahomes, because he does appear to be the future in Kansas City, and he performed exceptionally well. As for the Bengals, Mixon and Hill both split first-team carries. Both looked just okay. Nobody really flashed. Nobody really didn't. That backfield continues to be a mess as Mixon's draft stock falls. Hill is still the better value there to own if you're going to try and make a dart throw. As for receivers, Tyler Boyd ran as a wide receiver 3 in the absence of John Ross. Still nothing really solidified there, but Tyler Boyd, the second-year player, he had a lot of hype coming in last year, so he could recover some and be a sneaky pick. And last but not least, well, second to last but not least, Steelers and the Falcons. For the Steelers, Josh Dobbs is terrible. Not that that's a shock to anybody that listens to the show or to us. As for Martavis Bryant, he did play. He got his feet wet a little bit, but he wasn't overly impressive, mostly because Josh Dobbs is a terrible quarterback. Of note here, however, James Conner got his first NFL work. He carried 20 times for 98 yards, and he should be a dynasty stash. Le'Veon Bell hasn't signed a new contract with the Steelers yet. He's playing on a franchise tag. He's holding out of training camp, and he apparently nixed a 5-year deal that his agent had agreed to. So if Bell is gone next year, so it looks like it's going to be James Conner's running back job, or if anything happens to Bell in season. So James Conner is definitely worth an own. Pick him up in Dynasty. And if you're the left Bell owner, you may stash him at least come playoff time as the handcuff. As for the Falcons, not much to see there. Starters didn't really play. They don't really have any heavy position battles going on. Austin Hooper flashed a little bit, continues to be a sleeper tight end, but not much to note there. In the Saints versus the Chargers, the last game I was actually finishing up as I started putting notes together for this. The only thing of note there is that Alvin Kamara went off for a 50-yard touchdown run in the absence of Ingram and Adrian Peterson. The show, Nick and Dan specifically, continue to remain high on Alvin Kamara. I'm a little bit more tempered, but he should have that kind of Travers Cadet, Reggie Bush type of receiving role. However, with Mark Ingram there, I think it limits his upside a little bit. So that's all the news that's fit to dish, and game recaps, of course, for the preseason. As always, you can follow the show on Twitter at BeerfieldFF. Look for more better quality versions of these coming over the next few days and weeks as we go into the season and throughout the season. If you want to check out the full podcast, links are, I believe, in the description of the episode, as well as links to all of our social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. You can follow us on Facebook at Beerfield Fantasy Football. Instagram is also at BeerfieldFF. I have been your host for the first disastrous episode of Shots. You can follow me on Twitter at HotBFF. And otherwise, we will catch you guys, in the words of Nick and Dan, next time on Beerfield Fantasy Shots. Thanks.